Boys, we are finally here. The UFC is back with an absolutely stacked October. This might go down as one of the greatest months in UFC history in terms of name value. And we haven't had a pay-per-view since the middle of August, and we're now 6 days out from UFC 320. So in this video, I'm going to be going through the entire card of UFC 320. Amazing card, stacked card. I'm going to be giving you my predictions for every single fight. Ankalaev is returning to fight rematch Pereira on this card October 4th in Las Vegas. In the co-main event, we have Merab versus Sandhagen, 2 title fights, and in the feature fight, we have Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree. A banger of a card. I'm hyped. But with that out of the way, let's get right into predictions, starting off with the absolute barn burner. And I mean, if you're not off your seat out of nervousness and goosebumps thinking of this fight, then I don't know what you're doing in the MMA space. Veronica versus Brogan is an absolute banger and heater of a fight, and I'm so pumped to see this fight. I broke this down for 3 hours on my second channel. Check that out. But yeah, you guys already know I'm going Veronica by decision. So ecstatic for this fight. I cannot wait. Let's get on to the next one. Ramiz Brahimaj versus Austin Vanderford. Now, what I've taken from Ramiz Brahimaj's UFC career is that he's not impressive. He's not a great striker. He's not a great grappler. His last win was against Mickey Gall and Billy Ray Goff, 2 UFC journeymen who are not that great in their own right. And I think Brahimaj is like 4-3 in the UFC. And listen, man, say what you want about Austin Vanderford. Haha, he's Paige Van Zandt's husband, but he looked amazing in his first fight in the UFC against Nikolay Veretennikov, who's actually also on this card. But man, I cannot ignore how good Austin Vanderford looked in his UFC debut. I definitely overlooked him. I think I picked against him because I didn't think he was that great. I might have picked him. I don't remember. But I think a lot of us overlooked how potentially good this guy can be at middleweight. And Brahimaj, or welterweight, Brahimaj just isn't great, in my opinion. He isn't great. He doesn't pass the eye test. Austin Vanderford passes the eye test. Brahimaj, he just looks like, I don't know, he just looks like Marvin Vettori at welterweight. I don't know what other way to put it. So I'm going to be picking Austin Vanderford by a second round ground and pound TKO. Another impressive, dominant performance from Vanderford. And if he goes out there and dominates Brahimaj like I think he will, it's time to get this guy a step up in competition. He's 35 years old. Let's get him to the top quick if we can, if he's still somewhat in his prime. So yeah, Austin Vanderford by a second round TKO is my pick. Let's get on to Punahele Soriano versus Nikolay Veretennikov. So Nikolay Veretennikov is the guy who got destroyed by Austin Vanderford earlier this year. I think it was in February. And he's back on the same card the fight after, which is kind of funny. I think you should put Austin Vanderford above him on the card, being that he just defeated him. But that's neither here nor there. Veretennikov 1-2 in the UFC. He got a recent win over Francisco Prado, that guy who has like the Minecraft blockhead. Veretennikov narrowly beat him by a split decision. It was a good back and forth fight. You could have arguably went with Prado for that fight. I don't think it was a robbery though. But again, Veretennikov, another one of these guys that's not particularly impressive anywhere, right? And we're also talking about a guy who has a loss to Danny Barlow. Danny Barlow ain't good, bro. If you're losing to Danny Barlow and you're 13-6, it ain't good. Soriano, he's 5-4 in the UFC, right? Back-to-back wins. He's coming off a 2-fight win streak over Miguel Beza and Oros Medic. I think that I can't say his first name. Soriano is just passes the eye test better. He's beaten the better guys over Veretennikov, and I think he's going to get this one done by a decision. I think this fight will go to decision. I don't see a finish. I think these guys will just slug it out, but I think Soriano will just win the inside exchanges a little bit more than Veretennikov, and I think this fight will 100% take place on the feet. I don't see any grappling taking place. So with that said, I think Soriano is going to defeat Nikolay Veretennikov by a 29-28 decision. Maybe a 30-27, but I'm going to say 29-28. Maybe Veretennikov gets the first or the second round. Let's get on to the next fight. Patchy versus Jakub Wiklacz. Now, originally, when I saw this fight was booked, I didn't know anything about Jakub Wiklacz, but I was almost going to pick him. I was like, okay, this guy's coming from KSW. He's 6-1 in KSW. He's making his UFC debut, and Patchy looked terrible in his UFC debut against Mario Bautista. Granted, it was on short notice, but why am I now leaning Patchy? Well, after doing some research, I found out that Jakub Wiklacz is a grappler, right? This guy has 0 wins by KO TKO, so he's not a striker. Nearly all of his finish wins are by submission, so what does that tell me? You ain't gonna out-grapple Patchy. Say what you want about Patchy, stiff-ass grandma stance and his lack thereof head movement. But one thing you can say about him is his grappling is actually really good. And I do not think Jakub Wiklacz is going to come into the UFC and out-grapple Patchy or submit him by any means. Granted, these are two guys that are from, one guy's from Bellator, Patchy Mix, and one guy's from KSW, Jakub Wiklacz. I am going to trust that Patchy Mix on a full training camp facing a grappler can hold his own, and no matter how stiff he looks out there, I think he'll be able to get it done by decision against Jakub Wiklacz, and maybe even a submission. Who knows? I don't know the level of grappling that Jakub is coming from KSW. I don't know if like the guys he's submitting over there are amazing. I'm not going to pretend like I'm a hardcore. I've never even seen this guy fight, but based off the fact that he's a grappler, Patchy Mix is known for his grappling. I don't see Jakub Wiklacz coming into the UFC and just out grappling and destroying Patchy Mix. So with that being said, I'm going to pick Patchy Mix by a 30-27 decision, handing Jakub Wiklacz a loss in his UFC debut. Let's get on to the next fight on the card. Macy Chiasson versus Yana Santos. Yana Santos genuinely is terrible at fighting. Like, genuinely terrible at fighting. If you don't know, this is Thiago Santos' wife. She used to be Yana Kunitskaya, but listen, man, every time I watch her fight, I'm just less and less impressed. And it's, at the end of the day, it's women's bantamweight, right? Women's bantamweight might be the worst division on the entire UFC. Like, it's so bad. And if you don't think it's bad, name me 5 women's bantamweight fighters outside of these two, outside and the champion. It's like, you can't, because everybody at bantamweight, women's bantamweight sucks. But with that being said, I think Macy Chiasson is better. I think she's more dangerous. I think she has more finishing potential. I think she's more powerful. I think she has the better ground game. I think she has the advantage anywhere it goes. And Yana Santos has little to no finishing ability. So, and Macy Chiasson actually shown an ability to finish some fights. So I'm going to go Macy Chiasson by a second round KO TKO. But it's WMMA. Anything can happen. Wouldn't be surprised if I got this one wrong. Let's get on to the next one. Daniel Santos versus Joosang Yu. Now, Joosang Yu is the guy that got that viral left hook KO earlier in the year, I believe. It was a brutal left hook KO, face planted the guy. I forgot who he fought, but it was a really good performance. Daniel Santos, he's just your good old fashioned tough and gritty striker. Am I crazy? Is Daniel Santos trained out of Shooter Box? I don't know. I know Felipe dos Santos is, and I might be confusing the two, but Daniel Santos, he's faced some decent guys, right? But he's a tough and gritty striker. But I don't know, man. I think I'm going to go with the Asian. I think I'm going to go with Joosang Yu. This guy is Korean Zombie Jr. for a reason. This guy is coming to take everybody's head off. And it starts with Daniel Santos. Well, it started off with the other guy. He flatline KO'd. But I think Joosang Yu is the better striker. But maybe Daniel Santos will last to a decision and not get finished because he has a pretty good chin. But overall, I think this will be a stand-up fight. I don't think he'll go to the ground. And I think Joosang Yu will outstrike and maybe even drop Daniel Santos. Maybe not finish him, but drop him in a really like hectic moment in the fight. And they're like, oh, but Daniel Santos gets back in the fight, and ultimately Joosang Yu wins a 29-28, 30-27 decision. That's my prediction. Joosang Yu by decision. Let's get on to the next fight on the card. Chris Gutierrez versus Farid Basharat. Now, if you guys know me, I think the Basharat brothers are some of the most overrated fighters in the UFC. Javid Basharat got brutally flatlined by Ricky Simone. I think it was either last year or the beginning of this year, a brutal KO. And now Farid Basharat, who's still undefeated, and he's taking on Chris Gutierrez. Listen, Chris Gutierrez, say what you want about the guy, but he's a little underrated. 10-3 in the UFC. Losses to Song Yadong. No shame in that. Song Yadong's really good. And a loss to Pedro Munoz 2 years ago. Not the best loss. Pedro Munoz is definitely past his prime. But it's like, who is Farid Basharat beat, right? Yeah, he has a win over Damon Blackshear and Victor Hugo. But Victor Hugo's not very good, is he? It's like the Basharat bros are grapplers, and they offer little to nothing on the feet in terms of danger. Like, they're pitter-pat, like, just point strikers looking to get the fight to the ground, looking to work a submission. And I just think Chris Gutierrez is just going to be able to avoid the ground game of Basharat. And if it's on the feet, listen, I don't mind a Chris Gutierrez finish. I really don't. Basharat has no finishing potential on the feet. Chris Gutierrez has nothing to worry about of anything coming back his way. So I think, honestly, a safe pick here is Chris Gutierrez by a second round KO or a decision. I think I'm gonna lean towards decision. We've had a lot of decision wins this year. It seems like finishes these days are getting more and more rare. Some cards you'll get like almost all finishes, then you'll have like 3 cards in a row that are all decisions. So I'm gonna go Chris Gutierrez by a 29-28 decision over Farid Basharat, and both Basharats are gonna lose their O because if they can't get it to the ground, they're just not very good. They're pitter-pat strikers with no power in their hands, and I think they're a bit overrated, and I think Chris Gutierrez is going to get the job done. Let's get on to the next fight on the card. We got Edmen Shahbazyan versus Andre Muhniz. Now, had you asked me who would have won this fight 3-4 years ago, I would have said Andre Muhniz. But Andre Muhniz is like 35, 36 years old, and Man, listen, this guy has very overrated MMA grappling. Let's call it what it is, right? This guy's a jiu-jitsu champion, but he's been out-grappled in the UFC. And his wins, he has a win over Jung Young Park, but outside of that, we're talking Uriah Hall, who's like 41 years old. We're talking Eric Anders, who's on his way out, who's never really been that good. We're talking Jacare, who was like 40 when he submitted Jacare. So it's like Andre Muhniz is getting older himself, and I think we've seen Edmen Shahbazyan kind of come into his own recently in the UFC. He had a rough start in the UFC, right? He got a couple wins. He looked impressive, but then he went on a bit of a downward spiral where he was getting finished left and right. Everybody was finishing Edmen Shahbazyan. But recently, he seems more calculated. He seems more patient. And listen, he looked pretty good and measured in this last fight. And he also, his fight before that, he faced a guy in Dylan Budka who was like this huge wrestling prospect. And he ran through him, destroyed him in the first round, I believe. So I think Edmen Shahbazyan has all the momentum on his side. He's also way younger. I think Shahbazyan's like 27. Andre Muhniz is like 35, 36. And Muhniz just isn't a great striker. He also isn't great at getting the fight to the ground. So I just see an Edmen Shahbazyan managing his gas tank once again. He seems to be becoming a veteran in that regard. This guy's been in the UFC since he was 21 years old. 20 years old, now he's 27. So he's had a good amount of time to develop in the UFC. So Shahbazyan looks like he's managing his gas tank better these days. He looks like he's putting it all together. And listen, man, I think he's going to brutally KO Andre Muhniz in the first round. Muhniz just isn't good. Like, we just got to call it what it is. This guy's a mid-striker, and he's a guy that has a good grappling, so to speak. I think it's a little bit overrated, but he can't get the fight to the ground. So who cares if your grappling's good? So the only thing that Andre Muhniz can bank on to win this fight is if Edmen Shahbazyan gasses out, and I'm not going to bank on that. I think Shahbazyan's become more mature in his fighting style. He manages the gas tank better. I think he's going to KO Andre Muhniz in the first round. So Edmen Shahbazyan, first round KO is my official prediction for this fight. Let's get on to Ateba Gauthier versus Ozzy Diaz. I mean, do I really need to say what's going to happen in this fight? First of all, Ozzy Diaz, my guy, go to Turkey and get your hairline fixed. What on earth am I looking at on the screen? But let's be real, man. Ateba Gauthier is the Francis Ngannou of middleweight. This guy has natural power like we've never seen. I mean, this guy's power is something else. It doesn't matter if he doesn't need technique to beat Ozzy Diaz, because guess what? Ozzy Diaz sucks. Like, let's call it what it is, man. Ozzy Diaz is going to get massacred in this fight. And I hate to say that, although I truly do believe that Ateba Gauthier is going to destroy Ozzy Diaz, I am worried a little bit, right? Because how many times have we seen guys get fraud checked this year? How many times have we seen undefeated fighters or up-and-coming fighters that are supposed to be future promising prospects or future champions just get completely destroyed? But that's not going to change my pick. I'm still going to put my heart, soul, and mind into Ateba Gauthier to send Ozzy Diaz's head into orbit, and we might even be calling Ozzy Diaz the 8th planet, or the 9th planet, sorry, after his head gets sent into complete orbit by Ateba Gauthier. This is going to be a massacre. This is going to be a first round KO. I have very little doubts about it, outside the fact that a bunch of like prospects this year have been fraud checked. But I'm not going to let that sway my opinion of Ateba Gauthier. I think he's amazing. I think he has great power, great potential. He's still young. I think he's like 23, 24. So obviously he's going to not be super polished, and he has a lot of things to work on. But I think he can pass the Ozzy Diaz test, which isn't that much of a test at all. So give me Ateba Gauthier by a first round KO, brutal KO, and he makes it look easy against Ozzy Diaz. Let's get on to the main card. Abus Magomedov versus Joe Pyfer, main card opener. Now, originally, I was leaning Joe Pyfer. However, after looking at both of their records and thinking about how their UFC career started, man, Joe Pyfer is a bit overrated, isn't he? Let's look at Joe Pyfer's wins, right? They ain't looking too good when you really look at it. Joe Pyfer's wins. Kelvin Gastelum, right? Okay, Kelvin Gastelum, all he does is lose these days. Marc-Andre Barriault. Marc-Andre Barriault? Like, sure, he cracked Sharabullet, but Sharabullet's pretty overrated and not that great either. Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who's like almost 40 whenever Joe Pyfer submitted him, I believe. Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald Meerschaert, one of the worst fighters on the UFC roster. It's like, Joe Pyfer, who has he really beat, right? For me to be confident to pick him. Now, Abus Magomedov, I feel like he has like this never-ending narrative that follows him, that he has a bad gas tank, right? Because obviously he gassed out originally when he fought in his first couple UFC fights. I think the fight against Sean Strickland, he was beating the brakes off of Sean Strickland in the first round. Second round comes around, Abus Magomedov emptied the gas tank. Sean Strickland beats the brakes off of him and finishes him. So Abus Magomedov, though, is not the same guy that fought Sean Strickland. I think this guy has improved. He's become more measured, and he's become able to manage his gas tank a lot better. And let's not pretend like Joe Pyfer has this high fight IQ with a great gas tank. His last fight against Kelvin Gastelum, he was trying to rush to finish the entire fight, swinging for the fences. I don't know, man. I just find Joe Pyfer has a lack of fight IQ. He looks salty and he fights salty. Like, he fights like he wants to take guys his head off. Like, Joe Pyfer's such a meathead, and I think that will play against him against a guy like Abus Magomedov, who, like I said, people have this never-ending narrative that he has a terrible gas tank. I think he's past that. Do I think he has a great gas tank? No. But I think he's found a point in his career where he can, like, manage it, where he's not, like, gassing out immediately in fights. So I think Abus Magomedov is going to defeat Joe Pyfer, and it's a 3-round fight, which I do think favors Abus. I think Abus Magomedov is going to defeat Joe Pyfer by a 29-28 decision, where you're going to see salty man Joe Pyfer be super salty because he forced the finish, he didn't get it, and Abus Magomedov pieced him up on the outside. So give me Abus Magomedov by a 29-28 decision against salty man Pyfer, who will forever be in the salt mines forever. Let's get on to the next fight. Josh Emmett versus Youssef Zalal. Now, do I really need to say much about this fight? Josh Emmett is 40 years old. He looks every bit of 40. What the heck is Josh Emmett's abs? Youssef Zalal is like 28, 29. Very impressive win recently. Well, not impressive. It's Calvin Kattar, who's on a 5-fight losing streak. But a good win over Calvin Kattar, where a lot of people criticize him for quote-unquote running, but he did not run the first 2 rounds. He took it to Calvin Kattar, and then he kind of took the last round off. But Youssef Zalal, man, he went on a bit of a losing streak when he first faced Ilia Topuria in his UFC debut, and then Youssef Zalal, I think, lost like 3 fights in a row. But since then, he's on a 6-fight win streak. He's younger. He's a way better striker than Josh Emmett. He's a better grappler. And listen, man, I'm not going to count on the big meaty hook in 2025 of Josh Emmett to land and KO Youssef Zalal. I just won't. Youssef Zalal has got such a massive speed advantage and technique advantage on the feet in this fight. He would literally have to slip on a banana peel in order to lose this fight. He would have to go full Bryce Mitchell retard and just force his head into a knockout shot against Josh Emmett, which I don't see happening. I think Youssef Zalal is going to school Josh Emmett for 3 rounds. We might even see a 10-8 round in this fight. And yeah, man, I don't think Josh Emmett's going to have much success because he's a low output guy who depends on his big one heavy shot to land. And if it doesn't land, what have we seen? If it doesn't land, Josh Emmett just kind of gets schooled. And it's not like Josh Emmett's a guy who's going to be taking the fight to the ground. He has no wrestling or submission ability. So with that being said, I think this is a pretty easy win for Youssef Zalal. Youssef Zalal will beat Josh Emmett by a 30-27, 30-26 decision. This might be my lock of the card right here, honestly. I think this is a pretty safe bet. And if you're betting on Josh Emmett to KO somebody in the Big 25, yeah, I don't know, man. He hasn't KO'd anybody since 2023. Now was slow man Bryce Mitchell, who thinks the earth is flat. So just keep that in mind if you're picking Josh Emmett. Let's get on to the feature fight, one of my favorite fights of the entire year. Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree Jr. Now, Khalil Rountree Jr. has officially expelled the overrated accusations. A lot of people call this guy overrated, including myself. I said his 5-fight win streak against Anthony Smith and all those other guys was extremely overrated, and he didn't really beat anybody good. But some of his wins are aging well. Khalil Rountree got a win over Modestas Bukauskas, who's now on a win streak himself. Khalil Rountree just schooled Jamal Hill in a 50-45 masterclass. Very beautiful. But there's an issue for Khalil Rountree. He's coming back to face the almost said Chechenian, the Czech Republic samurai in Jiri Prochazka. And Jiri shown improved head movement. But first of all, both these guys last fought Jamal Hill. And Jiri Prochazka was able to get a finish over Jamal Hill, whereas Khalil Rountree just outpointed him to a 5-round decision, made it look easy, 50-45 them, made Jamal Hill look silly on the feet, was literally throwing standing hammer fists, which I've never seen before. That was pretty funny. But if we're talking about like clean technique and making it pretty and staying on the outside and picking in prod, and yeah, Khalil Rountree definitely is the better fighter when it comes to that. But good thing that's not the only thing that counts when you're in a mixed martial arts contest. Let's be real and call it what it is. Jiri Prochazka is much more dangerous than Khalil Rountree. He seemed to have improved head movement in his last fight. And listen, man, people don't talk about this. Jiri Prochazka has only lost to Alex Pereira in the last 10 years. That's not a bad thing, man. Alex Pereira is one of the greatest strikers in the history of the upper weight classes. That's Jiri Prochazka's only 2 losses in the last 10 years, decade, was to Alex Pereira. People forget, man, Jiri Prochazka has finished everyone he's faced in the UFC that is not named Alex Pereira. So for the people that are writing him off and saying Jiri's just a wild man that just leaves his hand down with his chin up in the air, I don't necessarily agree with that. First of all, he's shown good head movement in his last fight against Jamal Hill. I know it's Jamal Hill, but still. And also, Jiri Prochazka, he leaves his hands down on purpose to kind of reel you in to a big shot, to a big moment, and then kind of surprise you. I don't know, man. I don't think Khalil Rountree is going to be able to stay on the outside with his little pretty, cute style that he always does and try to pitter-pat his way to a 50-45 pretty decision. Listen, you ain't having a pretty fight against Jiri Prochazka. Jiri Prochazka is going to get on in the inside on Khalil Rountree, and he's going to make it a dog fight, and Khalil Rountree is going to break, just like he did in the 4th round of the Pereira fight. And I think that, well, it's going to be a 3-round fight. This should be a 5-round feature fight. Let me just say that. Because this is arguably a title eliminator, unless you go with Carlos Alberg for the title shot, which they might. But I'm picking Jiri Prochazka by a 2nd-round TKO. I am. It wouldn't surprise me if it went to decision, because Khalil Rountree actually has a pretty good chin, and he's hard to finish. I mean, even Pereira had to hit him with the kitchen sink to put him out. But I'm going to bank on Jiri Prochazka's insane finishing ability. This guy's only went to decision 3 times in his entire career. He's finished all of his UFC opponents, and I think Khalil Rountree would be no different. I do not think that Khalil Rountree 50-45ing Jamal Hill and going to 4th round Pereira is enough to say that he's going to defeat Jiri Prochazka, a guy who's only lost to Pereira in the last 10 years. So I'm taking Jiri Prochazka, and I'm taking him by 2nd-round finish. I think that, hey, who knows, man? He submitted Glover Teixeira. Who's to say Jiri Prochazka doesn't submit Khalil Rountree? Watch out for that. That might be like a sneaky prop pick on this fight. But I'm going to go Jiri Prochazka by a 2nd-round TKO, by way of being a samurai. Let's get on to the co-main event. Merab Dvalishvili returns to face Corey Sandhagen. Now, I'm having trouble getting excited for this fight, I'm going to be honest, because Merab's just so dominant. He's so good, and now he's even talking about how he's going to be finishing guys. And man, Corey Sandhagen has one way to win this fight, and that's by a flying knee. If Corey Sandhagen does not land a flying knee against Merab in the fight, he's losing. He's going to get taken down over and over. We've seen time and time again that Corey Sandhagen will gas out in his fights. He does. He gasses out. He has pillow hands. Corey Sandhagen has little to no power in his hands. All of his knockouts that you see in the UFC are by way of knee, by way of spinning kick. I don't think he has any knockouts with his hands. Maybe a TKO, ground and pound, but Corey Sandhagen has pillow hands. So Merab doesn't really have to worry about the strikes coming back his way unless it's a flying knee. Corey Sandhagen obviously has that brutal flying knee KO over Frankie Edgar back in the day. But listen, bro, this is not 2021 anymore. You're facing the greatest bantamweight of all time, Merab Dvalishvili. And I think Merab Dvalishvili is going to school Corey Sandhagen. Now, I think Corey Sandhagen will do better than Sean O'Malley in the second fight that they had. Sean O'Malley looked terrible in that fight. Merab pressured him, made it look easy. O'Malley wasn't able to get his game going. Merab smashed him. Fair enough. I do not think Merab's going to be able to run through Corey Sandhagen and submit him with ease like he did to Sean O'Malley. I think Corey Sandhagen will hang in there. He might even have a moment where people are like, oh, Corey hit him good there. But Merab will do what he does best. He will press the action. He will push forward. He will take down Corey Sandhagen over and over. And guess what? He's going to break his own takedown record again. This guy's going to be the first fighter in UFC history to surpass 100 takedowns. This guy's at 97 takedowns. He's 100% going to take Corey Sandhagen down 3 or more times. He's going to take him down 10 plus times. Let's call it what it is. Corey Sandhagen, we joke, right? This guy gets into the science lab and talks about the outside foot battle and all the X's and O's, the periodic table of the MMA world. Corey Sandhagen dabbles into that, but it's not going to matter, man. You can bring all the technique and all the skills in the world. At the end of the day, Merab doesn't care about that, man. This guy is battle tested. This guy has an insane chin, and even if you grok him, he'll come back and he'll take you down over. You literally have to put Merab's lights out cold in order to beat this guy, and I don't think Corey Sandhagen has that ability. When's the last time Corey Sandhagen put somebody out cold? It was, what, 4 years ago against Frankie Edgar or Mola Moraes, which two guys who were notoriously chinny towards the end of their career. So I don't see Corey Sandhagen being the guy to beat Merab, and the reason I'm saying he has to KO him, the pace is just too much, man. Corey Sandhagen's skill set on the feet will not matter because by round 2 or 3, he's going to be extremely tired. And even if he's able to keep up with Merab in the earlier rounds, it will not matter. Merab Dvalishvili will take over the fight, and he will bully Corey Sandhagen, and he will beat him down. I think Merab's going to win a 49-46 decision against Corey Sandhagen, where you see heavy dominance in the later rounds. And hey, man, like Merab said, his coach recently said he's going more for finishes, so who knows? Maybe Merab even gets a finish. I don't know if I'm banking on a Merab finish. I'm not going to pretend like all of a sudden he's this like submission or knockout machine. He's not, but I don't see a path to victory for Corey Sandhagen outside of like a flying knee KO, which I'm not going to bank on. With that being said, I do think more guys should attempt things like flying knees against Merab, because guess what? Merab's going to take you down whether you like it or not. You might as well throw a flying knee in there, but maybe that doesn't matter because Merab's timing on his takedown shots are so good and they're so relentless that guys can't even be bothered to think about a flying knee. They're just worried about 50 more takedowns coming. But yes, my official pick is going to be Merab Dvalishvili by a 49-46. Corey Sandhagen's going to be defeated, tired, withered by the third, fourth round. And it's just going to be a Merab takeover. It's going to look similar to the Umar fight, but I think Merab will take over earlier in the fight than he did in the Umar fight. I think by the middle of the second round, Merab will be in full control of this fight. He will be dominating Corey Sandhagen, and Corey Sandhagen is going to be lost like everybody else that fights Merab is. And Merab's just going to take him down, beat him up, and maybe a submission from Merab. I don't see it. I think Corey Sandhagen will last to the last bell, but I ultimately, Merab Dvalishvili by a 49-46 decision is my pick. And now let's get on to the main event. Magomed Ankalaev and Alex Pereira. Now there's more stakes in the line in this fight, right? These guys have had some beef recently where they literally had a full-blown beef at the PI over Google Translate, which is one of the most diabolical things I've ever seen. Having beef over Google Translate is hilarious, first of all, but this is the rematch, right? The first fight, there's a narrative that Alex Pereira wasn't 100%. He was traveling around the world. He was injured. He was sick. There's all these narratives that Alex Pereira maybe wasn't focused. And now that he's coming in, because Alex Pereira claimed he fought Magomed Ankalaev at 40%, and he's going to come into this fight 100%, and he's going to take back his title, and nobody will care about Ankalaev. Where Ankalaev, on the other hand, is saying that he's going to send Alex Pereira back to the tire shop. Alex Pereira was always overrated, and he would have never became champion if he had to fight Magomed on the way up. And I'm going to be honest, I am leaning Magomed. As much as I am in the back of my mind saying, I don't know, man, maybe Alex with a chip on his shoulder, Magomed's pissing him off, and maybe he comes in healthy and he destroys Magomed. I don't know, man. I feel like that's living in fantasy land. Alex Pereira is now 38 years old, right? And Magomed Ankalaev is 33. He's in his absolute prime. Magomed Ankalaev has the speed advantage. He has the boxing advantage. He has the grappling advantage. The only thing Alex Pereira really has over Magomed Ankalaev, I would say, is power and kickboxing, right? I think Alex Pereira has the better kicks. And I don't necessarily believe that just because Alex Pereira was able to stuff all the takedowns in the first fight, that Magomed Ankalaev won't shoot a takedown in this fight, right? I think Magomed Ankalaev is a mixed martial artist. Do I think he's going to submit Alex Pereira? No, but I think he will shoot some takedowns on Alex just to keep him guessing, just to keep him on his toes. And that doesn't mean, just because, like I said, just because he didn't take down Alex in the first fight doesn't mean he won't get a takedown in this fight. And I think there's two methods of victory in this fight. Magomed Ankalaev by decision or Alex Pereira by KO. And I don't know if I can bank on Alex Pereira to KO a guy in Ankalaev who's never been KO'd. This guy's only been beaten once by Paul Craig way back in 2018 in his UFC debut, which was kind of a fluke win. It had 1 second left on the clock. And am I really banking on a 38-year-old Alex Pereira to come back and KO a guy who's never been KO'd in his entire career, and Magomed Ankalaev, who has an iron chin, who's faster, who's younger? I don't know, man. I don't think I can. I think I'm going to have to go with Magomed Ankalaev getting it done by decision. And don't get me wrong, I'm a critic of Ankalaev. I don't think he's the most exciting fighter. I think he's kind of a boring fighter. I kind of agree with Alex. He's kind of irrelevant, which is why he has to have Ali go on his Twitter and talk all this smack. Because no one really cares about Ankalaev. He's a bit of a boring fighter. Like, name memorable performances about Ankalaev. There's not too many, right? Like, you think of Ankalaev's career, he's not really like a guy like... Magomed Ankalaev doesn't fight to dominate and to destroy his opponent. He fights to win. That's very clear. And there's nothing wrong with that. But on the flip side, I can be critical of his wins and his fighting style. Sure, it's effective, but it's not entertaining. We are in the entertainment business. So with all that junk and all that yapping aside, I do think that ultimately Magomed Ankalaev is going to defeat Alex Pereira once again by decision. That is my official pick. And listen, at the end of the day, if Alex Pereira goes out there and KOs him out cold, I'm not going to be mad about that, bro. I like Alex Pereira as champion. And then you can set up the super fight between Alex Pereira and Tom Aspinall. I would love that, but we don't live in fantasy land. We live in the real world, and the real world tells me that Magomed Ankalaev is going to beat Alex Pereira once again by decision. And maybe then we see Alex Pereira either retire or move up to heavyweight. I don't know. But that's my full card predictions for UFC 320. The best pay-per-view we've had in a while. This card is stacked from top to bottom outside of the WMMA fights. I'm very excited for the UFC's pay-per-view return. It's been a month and a half with no UFC pay-per-view. We've been dry on the channel. There ain't much been going on in the MMA space, so I'm very pumped to get back to this card 6 days from now. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Who are you guys picking? And that's it, guys. I'm out. Peace.